FM News Talk 97.1.
On demand audio. Allman in the morning. Common Sense Radio.
Good morning, you bunch of drunks.
John, thanks for calling the show. What's going on?
Hey, Jamie, my question is, I think you forget history of Libya. Libya has been an enemy, basically, of the United States for over 40 years under the Bush administration, became an ally after 9/11 once the Bush administration agreed to free up some funds that were froze because of Libya funds, because they agreed to come out against Al-Qaeda.
I got you. No, actually, John, you're wrong. Libya became an ally of ours, and Gaddafi did, after we went into Iraq, and Gaddafi was scared out of his wits that we'd do the same thing to him if he threatened the United States of America the way Saddam Hussein did. So between that and the fact that Ronald Reagan gave him a huge headache by bombing his house, a headache that lasted for decades, essentially. Gaddafi was our boy. Gaddafi would do anything we told him to do. Gaddafi hated Al-Qaeda, and Libya, compared to right now, they're going to wish they had Gaddafi back, and I'm sure a lot of them do. So, Gaddafi wasn't a threat. Are we really going back to the whole? You really are going to defend the Arab Spring and the U.S. involvement in removing Mubarak and Gaddafi? Really? We're not. We've seen the toothpaste out of the tube. Obama's foreign policy is a failure, and I'm not going to sit here and debate whether or not the Arab Spring was a good idea. When you can ask Chris Stevens' family whether the Arab Spring was a good idea. Don't ask me. Ask him. Ask his family. Ask the family of the 3 other people that died whether the Arab Spring was a good idea. All right, Hillary Clinton. I don't know whether she was... You have to be... In Hillary's defense, you have to be careful. You don't want to go and then start to automatically blame the government of Libya or this kind of thing. But you also don't go in the opposite direction of... I guess it sounded like she was making this up. I don't know.
Heavily armed militants assaulted the compound and set fire to our buildings. American and Libyan security personnel battled the attackers together.
No, they didn't. In fact, the latest news is that they transferred Chris Stevens to another house, and then security personnel pointed the Moods to the house where they went and got him and lit the place on fire. He died of smoke inhalation. He suffocated. And stomach bleeding, everything else. And there were some people who took him to the hospital. There were some good Libyans out there, sure. But this idea somehow this was somehow the Alamo all over again is a little bit of a stretch, Hill. And I love how they're confounded. I just can't believe it.
How could this happen?
How could this happen?
How could this happen in a country we helped liberate, in a city we helped save from destruction?
Because you handed it over to fundamentalist Islamists. That's why. And you're lucky it hasn't happened in Egypt yet, where somebody actually has been killed. Everybody has kind of forgotten about the fact that 6 months ago or so, they attacked and burned the Israeli embassy. Do you guys remember that? That should have been sign enough that, this thing, handing this country over to the Islamists isn't such a great idea, is it? And it's not such a great idea. And this idea somehow that this is a small band of militants who are out there is ridiculous. We've seen the videotape. That wasn't a small band of militants, folks. It was a pretty big, big group of people out there. Mitt Romney, of course, went before the cameras yesterday, and much to the insult of reporters who just didn't think it was quite the right time for Mitt Romney to speak up. And I guess Romney needs to consult NBC and CBS and NPR for when it's the right time to discuss matters.
When you talk about mixed signals, the world is watching. Isn't this itself a mixed signal when you criticize the administration at a time that Americans are being killed? Shouldn't politics stop for this?
We have a campaign for presidency of the United States and are speaking about the different courses we would each take with regards to the challenges that the world faces.
Yeah, Romney's like, we have a campaign for the future of this country and indeed the world, you idiot. It's a perfect time to talk about it. And you know what? I don't understand where we get, and it's always the media that drives this. Now's not the right time. People, we need to put politics aside. Of course you want to put politics aside, because if you put politics aside, then your guy won't be attacked for the abject failure of his foreign policy. So of course you want to put politics aside, because you don't want to talk about it. The one thing left that the Obama administration had that actually they could take credit for in terms of foreign policy, of obviously the killing of Osama, the one thing that was still seen as their strength is now their absolute total weakness, as reflected in the tumult over there in Egypt, as well as in Libya, and now in Yemen, by the way. So they have nothing now. So it's the same people who want bipartisanship. You hear the reporters talk about this all the time. We need to come together. No, you don't. What you want is for conservatives to acquiesce to your point of view. That's what you mean when you want bipartisanship. You want us to suck up to you. That's what you want. That's what bipartisanship is all about. Anyway, the reporters, by the way, caught on tape plotting before this thing all went down. Did you hear this? Number one. Go to number one real quick. This is Jan Crawford of CBS, along with some dude from named Shapiro from NPR.
That's the question. Yeah, that's the question.
Yes, everything.
I wouldn't even say, I would just say, do you regret your question?
Yeah, so then she and Mr. Shapiro then summarily then started asking the questions they plotted to ask. Let's go to number 8 here real quickly.
Ravi, do you think, though, coming so soon after the events really had unfolded overnight was appropriate to be weighing in on this as this crisis is unfolding?
Yeah, and then Shapiro or somebody else involved in the conversation kept to the script.
Do you regret the tone at all, given what we know now?
Yeah.
The embassy...
Regret the tone. And then, of course, another Al-Qaeda whore in the form of Chris Matthews went on the air, actually turning this into a blame game for Romney.
The tragedy in Benghazi that cost Ambassador Stevenson's life, unfortunately, has been overshadowed by the desperate reach by Mitt Romney to secure political advantage.
Yeah, the cavalcade of prostitution continues as the lead prostitute. This guy, Don Lemon from CNN, this guy is, his head is so far up the rear end of Obama and his administration, you'd need the jaws of life to remove that head from there. This is Don Lemon, who has decided that he was going to take on an individual, Richard Williamson, who is a foreign policy expert for Mitt Romney. Here's how it all went down there.
That's a silly question. Almost anything.
It's not a silly question, because now we're looking at you're having to backtrack now. You're having to backtrack now and talk about a statement, and so it's not a silly question. That's why you're here, is to talk about that statement. So go ahead.
I came here to talk about the failed policies in the Middle East, which is what the American people are interested. The failed policies of leading from behind. What you want to do is play a process getcha question. I don't want to play your game. But
I'm not playing a getcha question. All I'm asking you is to answer my question.
His statement was fine. It was acceptable. It was right. Mm-hmm. Did you just hear me?
Yeah,
it was fine. It was acceptable. It was right.
I've got to run. Thank you, Ambassador Richard Williamson.
We look forward to talking about the substance when you're available.
It was fantastic.
How dare you?
Yeah, that's Don Lemon there. Mike Barnicle, meanwhile, he was actually we thought this was going to be a big deal. It was going to happen a lot, but it really didn't. The focus on Terry Jones, the preacher, Barnicle, who is a convicted plagiarist who's on the Morning Joe program there, is the one guy who actually stayed with this narrative that we ought to actually be focusing on the preacher. Here
Given this supposed minister's role in last year's riots in Afghanistan, where people died, and given his apparent or his alleged role in this film, where not yet nailed down, but at least one American, perhaps the American ambassador, is dead, it might be time for the Department of Justice to start viewing his role as an accessory before or after the fact.
Yeah, if the preacher's an accessory, then President Obama is too. 969-9797, 866-455-9797.